How to virginize almost any BMW cluster, and what is the process of virginizing at all, and how to do that precisely and professionally will be covered in today's video. Hello, I'm Vladimir. You are on the BMW channel. Stay tuned. You have to understand that in order to use used parts in your BMW, you have to follow a certain procedure. Obviously, BMW factory does not want you to do that for a variety of the reasons. With the clusters, actually, the cluster is very specific ECU. You cannot just plug and play used cluster into your BMW and start using it. Procedure you have to do is called virginizing. Why it is so important to virginize the cluster before putting it into your car? You have to understand how the ECUs inside the BMWs are working. For example, the cluster, it communicates with the security ECU of your BMW. In case of G series, it will be BDC. On F series, it could be BDC, FEM, or CAS ECU, and so on and so on and so on. When you are fitting the used part into your BMW, in our case the cluster, it will have different VIN code compared to a vehicle. It's obvious, of course. So when the cluster ECU, when you turn on the ignition, the cluster ECU will compare its VIN code to the security ECU, and actually it will see that VIN codes are different. And after that, the communication between those two ECUs will be not as it should be, because security has not passed. So in order for those ECUs to communicate properly to each other, we have to virginize the cluster and correct the VIN code. VIN code was the first part of the virginization, and also we have to work with the mileage as well. I will go back to the correction of the mileage a bit later in that video, but of course any correction of the mileage is done only in the diagnostical purposes. You should not decrease the mileage to sell the car for better value, and actually information that is given in that video will be not enough to decrease the mileage in the whole car. And guys, do not even try to ask me about how to do that, because I am not revealing that information. It is illegal. As always, I prefer to give you as precise information as I only can. And that's why, actually, a couple years ago, I have already released a video about how to virginize the cluster. You can see it over there if you have not seen yet. In that video, actually, I'm covering all the technical detail. For example, what type of the heating station to use, what temperature to use, what is rose alloy, how to use copper wick, and so on and so on and so on. I will be not focusing on those details in current video anymore. If you haven't seen previous video before, absolutely feel free to do so. In that way, you'll get way better picture about how to virginize the clusters on BMW. Before we will continue with actually really new information I haven't been showing you before, and before I reveal my secret, how I'm working with the G series cluster, I would like to thank all the supporters of my channel. If you are interested in supporting my channel and seeing all the videos way before the others on the YouTube can see those, click that join button, and thank you for your support. Let's continue. When we are working with the ECUs directly, we have to use different programmers. For example, we have different programmers today. This is the EEPROM or the CG Pro. Different programmers made by different companies. Some are good for some ECUs, and others are good, better for other ECUs. Personally, it is just my personal opinion. Every time I work with the clusters, I prefer the CG Pro. It does not mean that EEPROM is not a good programmer. Of course, it is a good programmer, but it's a good programmer for other tasks. So for the clusters, my choice is CG Pro. Of course, there are also other programmers available that are able to work with different clusters of the BMWs. I have not tried all the programmers in the world, but among those that I have tried, CG Pro does the job. Also, when we work with the programmer, we don't work with the specific chassis or series of BMW. We work with specific ECU, and actually we work with the specific memory type that's over there. Following information is super important. I would categorize the BMW clusters into three bigger families. The older family, 35080, you can see it over there. It can be found on the E series. This memory type is very old, and actually whatever programmer is able to virginize properly that memory type. So basically, whatever programmer, and you are good to go. On the F series, there are two types of the EEPROMs that can be found in the clusters. The first one is the family called 35160. It is found on all the F series, and actually on the newer F series, even 35128 memory type is found. What is the difference? Different EEPROMs will have, first, different size of the memory, and the second, the most important, the different type of the security. That's why, for example, of course, E series is like the oldest one. It has seen dinosaurs, and the EEPROMs or the chips that are being used over there, they have less security because the EEPROMs that are being used on the E series are the oldest one, and actually it's kind of obvious. So the newest EEPROM will be 35128. It has the best security, and actually it is stated that in the EEPROM it can work with that memory type. It's stated in official documentation, but actually it is unable to virginize it properly. It can correct the VIN code, but it cannot correct the mileage anyhow. But EEPROM can correct the mileage and the VIN code in 35128 family almost easily. Why do I mean by almost? See later in the video. This is my secret. What is the EEPROM? The memory type we're talking about? Actually, it is 8-pin chip. It looks like that one. You can see exact family. It is always written on the memory type itself. Be aware that, for example, on the E series, I told that the family is 35080, but actually you can find different sub-variations of that. But to be honest, it does not matter. If you select the correct family type, you are good to go. And that's exactly the same for the next family type, 35160. And sometimes you can find even that kind of families, but it's still the same family. Why it's important to categorize those into different families? Because they have different memory size and different security. And that's why you need to know which programmer to use when you're working with whatever family. But I say again, if you use that one, you are good with all the family types used in the BMW clusters. Let's go inside that cluster and see how it actually should be done. Step 1, disassemble cluster. Step 2, desolder EEPROM. And step 3, work with the EEPROM. I will fast forward the process to save up a bit of your time. If you're interested in the process how to desolder it properly, please see the video I was mentioning before. This is the circuit board. The EEPROM is located over here, and actually we need that EEPROM. I'll try to focus. Yes, you can see the correct memory type. I have desoldered the EEPROM from the cluster, and I have soldered it to the special circuit board that actually included in one set with the programmer. And now it's the time for the special trick from me to you, my dear subscribers. Absolutely look like if you haven't done that before, because you will not find that information anywhere online. I guess a lot of you have played video games, and you have noticed that if you're playing a lot, your computer laptop or the phone gets hotter and your FPS drops down, the frame per second. It's because the processor starts throttling and it cannot work as efficiently anymore. So based on that, we can make the deduction that based on the temperature of the chip, it performs differently. And that's why if you have soldered your EEPROM to the circuit board and then you start talking to your friends, wife, and so on, it cools down. And if you try to virginize it, you'll be unsuccessful. Believe me, I have tried that several times. I was trying to virginize the chip for like 40 minutes. Process keeps going and in the end it just writes failure. You cannot proceed with that because the temperature has to be right. I will connect the computer as it should be connected, and then I will show you how to heat it up, for how long you have to heat it up, and when is the right time to press. Only then you'll be successful. I have connected my programmer CG Pro to my laptop. Now I'm starting the CG Pro software and have a look to my screen. Of course, different programmers will have different layout, how to work and so on. But the thing I like about the CG Pro, you can select the type of the ECU you're working with, for example, the dashboard, then BMW, and over here you can see different families. So 080 DQ or whatever, it's for the E series, 160 it's for the older F series, and here again 35080 VP, V6 and so on. As I told you, the family is the same, it's for the E series, but we have to look for 35128 because this was the exactly memory type that was installed on our cluster. Over here, what is important, you can see mode 1, 2 and 3. What are those different modes? Different modes are the different algorithms, how the mileage is stored in the EEPROM. For example, for E and F series, always use mode 1. For the G series or newer F series, where the EEPROM 35128 is installed, use mode 2. Why? I'll show you in a second, but this is important. So we select the mode 2 and we can actually press read. Reading out information is almost never a problem if you have done the soldering properly. Erasing the information, here is the trick. You can see the operation is completed, and actually you can see it suggests us to save it. Of course, always save, and I prefer my naming convention, so it will be the Vin original, and KM it is actually original, so nothing was changed. File saved successfully. Have a look to the mileage. It shows 98,000 kilometers, but this cluster is from my BMW, my G30, and actually I know that over there the mileage should be more than 150,000, closer to 160,000. As you can see, in mode 2 it was calculated not correctly. Let's try in mode 1. And in mode 1 it should be even smaller. It should not also be correct. Yes, and you can see the mileage is twice as small. Let's try mode 3. And in the mode 3, I'll oversave it. You can see the mileage is almost 160,000. This is the correct mileage from my car. So the hint for those different modes, you have to know what is the estimate mileage that was in that cluster and go with that. If you don't know which one to use, then use the higher one. In our case, it will be mode 3. So you know that we need to virginize or delete the VIN code in order for cluster. VIN code will be in the future compared with the security ECU. If there is mismatch, nothing will continue to work properly. If they are matching, everything is okay. But the mileage, why it's important? That cluster, I will sell that, of course, because I don't need 2 clusters for my car. And if you will be retrofitting that cluster into your car. If I will virginize only the VIN code and leave the mileage as it is, and your car, if it has smaller mileage than mine or 160,000, your car will get the mileage from that cluster, and that's why it's not a good idea. That's why we need to lower that mileage. It is not recommended to lower it to the zero. It has to be more than 16 kilometers. I usually do 1000 kilometers. It's just how the memory operates. Just remember, 1000 kilometers is okay. And believe me, whatever car you'll be retrofitting the cluster, most likely will have more than 1000 kilometers. That's why it will be still considered as virginized. But if you purchase the used cluster from the eBay, Amazon, or wherever, and you can see that the mileage in that cluster is actually lower than the car you'll be retrofitting the cluster to, you don't have to work with the mileage at all. You can leave it as it is, because mileage will go automatically to the level of your car if the VIN codes do match. And actually it makes the procedure way easier, because the mileage is written in the incremental part of the EEPROM. Those are the first two lines, and only that part of the EEPROM has security. That's why all those different manipulations that will be needed soon to lower the mileage will be not required if you don't need to work with the mileage. That's why it will make way easier. But in our case, of course, we'll go with the hardest scenario, and I'll show you how to lower the mileage in the cluster. Before working with the mileage itself, I always prefer to start with the VIN codes, because the VIN code information is located in not secure part of the EEPROM, and if you're unable to work even with the EEPROM, with the VIN code, do not go to the mileage, because you will fail 100%. So, working with the VIN code, have a look to my screen. You can see the dump of my cluster. We have to locate the VIN code. In different memory types, the VIN code will be located in different places, and it can be found for 1, 2, 3 times, or 3 times. It could be the VIN short, or only the last 7 digits, or the VIN long, the full 17 digits. So you have to scan it through until you see your VIN code. You will recognize it immediately. For example, those 7 digits, those are the 7 last digits of my VIN code. Sometimes it is hard to recognize all the places where it is, because if you don't know how many times it should be present, you just might be tired and not look for it properly. The thing I recommend you to do is open such a website as hex.aet and open the file over there. It is very convenient, hex reductor. You open it up and you continue scrolling for your VIN code. As we have already seen, my VIN code is that one. And the thing I recommend you use the search function, because in that way you will not miss anything. You just type in the VIN code you can see. So 3632. Make sure you can see it. Yes, that's good. And you can cycle it through. You can see it 1 time, 2nd time, and is it the 3rd time or no? So yes, it was present 3 times. We go again and find next. So the thing we need to do is to replace that VIN code with all the Fs, double Fs. Make sure not to replace any additional symbol, because if you do that, you will just ruin your EEPROM and it will not work well. You press find next, it goes to the next location exactly to the right place. You just highlight it and press FF. Be really careful with that. And pressing find next, and here's the 3rd time. And in case of our memory, only 3 times VIN short is present. And you continue find next, and actually no criteria found. The thing I like to do, scroll to the beginning and again find next. It shows nothing else is present. It means that no more VIN code is stored in that chip. Good.
Let's save it, press save as, and actually we can see our dump. VIN code is FF, kilometers are original, and actually we know that kilometer is 160,000-ish, and pressing save. Done. We can close the hexed, and now we can write that VIN code into the memory. And now it's almost the time for the trick. Remember, I told you different temperatures of the chips and so on work differently. I was talking to you kind of long. You can see I can even touch the memory, so it's cold now. With the cold memory, we are still able to virginize the VIN code, but not the mileage. I'll show you to prove it. We will open our modified software. VIN original, okay, it has saved it to that location. So I'm opening the dump, so you can see the VIN code is FF. I'll open it, and to write that into the memory, it could be cold. It's absolutely okay, and we press write. Pressing write, we have saved the original. Okay, it will be done successfully without any issues. But believe me, if I'll try to virginize the mileage at the moment, we will fail. It will cycle for 30-40 minutes, and you cannot interrupt the process because you will just break your EEPROM. You can see operation completed. We press OK. I always like to read it one more time, just to make sure what was written over there. Reading it again. You can see I have done nothing with the mileage. It's still the same one. I'll show you. So you can see the mileage down left, it's still the same. And we have read out the EEPROM, the EEPROM. So VIN code is FF, and we can save it as a test. And press save. OK. And now you can cycle through to all the same locations where the VIN code was present, and actually, believe me, you will not find that anymore over there. We're going to the same locations, and actually, yes, we don't see the VIN code, so it shows that everything was as it should be. Now it's time to work with the mileage. So the trick will be to heat up the EEPROM. I'll start my second camera. As you can see, I'm using my heat gun. It's being heated up, and actually this is the temperature for my soldering iron, and I have set 400 degrees for the heat gun as well. So the promised trick will be, with the 400 degrees, I will heat up the memory. Usually I'm heating up each 30-40 seconds. You're making just small circular movements to heat it up. At the same time, seeing at your watch how much time has passed, because the temperature actually really matters here. I'm continuing to heat it up. Yes, 30 seconds, let's make 5 more. Yeah, that's good. Putting the heat gun aside, and now actually the timer is running. I'm pressing read one more time, just to make sure connection is still okay. Reading out was successful, and actually we don't need to save it. I'm pressing for that mileage, and remember, I recommended you to make 1000, press OK. And now the programmer will start erasing the incremental part, or where the mileage is actually stored. Without that heating process, you can do it forever and you will be failing. That's why that trick is super important. It says operation completed, and you can see 1000 kilometers. We can press read again, just to make sure. And yes, it says 1000 kilometers and boom, it took almost nothing. I'll just save it, because whatever you read out, you have to save it. So we make VIN FF and kilometer is actually 1K. Boom. Let's sum it up. As you have seen, it took me less than a minute to virginize EEPROM type 35128. For some guys it takes days and even like infinite amount of time, because they just don't know that trick how to work with the temperature. Now you know that. If you did not know that before and you have not subscribed still to my channel, feel free to do so, because I guess it's super valuable information. The whole trick was in playing with temperature. Remember, metals operate differently at different temperatures, and same is for the semiconductors or for the chips. They do work differently at different temperatures. That's why without heating it up, you'll be most likely unsuccessful. Maybe some other programmers that do have different working algorithms will be able to do that without the heating trick, but for that programmer it works like a charm. So feel free to use it. I have seen different variations of that information, how you should work. In some places it is written that you have to register to the official website, then cool down, make 2 squats, 3 push-ups and so on. It is not necessary. The recommendation from my side, put 400 degrees, heat it up for 30 to 45 seconds. Why the time is different? Because it depends of the ambient temperature where you're working. If you're working in the cool garage, you have to heat it up for a bit longer time. If you're working with the room temperature, 30-40 seconds is enough. And then instantly, while the chip is still cools down, read out the chip and correct the mileage. Boom, as easy as that. And actually guys, that's it. I will not waste your time assembling the cluster together. I'll just make it in the big background and enjoy new knowledge. Stay tuned. Bye.